Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the last presidential debate, third and final one. Now, here's the question. Who won this debate? What was this debate about? This is why you're here. This is what I'm going to give you. Now, the debate generally was talking about... Hang on a minute. Camera a little crooked, sorry. I do that all the time. This debate was mainly for foreign policy because the first two debates did not fully cover that. The first debate and the second debate talked about the economy, health care. It somewhat talked about what happened with foreign policy. It did talk somewhat about the military. That's what both debates mainly had. When you had the same as the first debate, like this one, which was in a quiet environment where the moderator asked the questions to each candidate. The second debate was mainly over a town hall type of feel where the people in the audience were allowed to ask questions of their own choosing, written on cards so they know exactly what they want to say. The moderator is the one that's supposed to direct both candidates to answering these questions and maybe throw in an extra question or to elaborate more on the original question that was asked. Kind of to add a little more to it, but not to change the question, just to add to that question. So that's what the first two debates were about. This one was generally about foreign policy. They covered a very large range of places, mainly in the Middle East. This is where mainly was covered. So we're going to cover in the Middle East. Now, there's so much here. It's a lot to talk about. Okay, we're going to talk about Iraq. It was scattered throughout the night talking about Iraq and what role the United States played in it. They didn't talk much about George W. Bush. This is not about him. A lot of people, I know a lot of people have a lot of rhetoric saying basically George W. Bush put us in there. George W. Bush is the cause of all woes. Why don't we kill George W. Bush? Why don't we have him prosecuted to the full extent of the law? This is not about him, ladies and gentlemen. This is what really comes down to a president who takes over from a previous one. No matter how you feel about what is happening in the world, if a president previously has gone to war in some form of capacity, either it's a short-term conflict or a long one, the next president is responsible for making the decisions what happen after that. It doesn't make a difference of the policies that are in play at the time. And I know a lot of people, and I'm sure I'm going to get flack for this, are going to say, yes, there is. Whatever's there from the other president, it's all his fault. Or her fault. Whenever finally women are voted in. And I'll be glad when a woman president gets voted in. Ladies, don't think I don't care about that. I do. It doesn't make a difference what your sex is or your ethnicity. If you got the ability, get in the office, get in there. But essentially it's this. It makes no difference of the previous president. Once a new president is in office, the first roughly 180 days, many of the original policies are there. The president, the vice president, the Secretary of State, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, usually is the Secretary of Defense is there. Mainly all the main generals will be there if it's involving any type of war type of situation. If they're not on the field, the main five-star generals, the brigadier generals, anyone who's in authority will usually be there, and they will hammer out what they need to do with what's going on here. If they see that the previous president's ideas work, they'll leave them. If they see the previous president's ideas don't work, they get rid of them. And as what happened with Barack Obama, he decided to simply end the war in Iraq and now end the war in Afghanistan. This is all on him. It makes no difference what happens in Iraq. He decided to end it in 2013 to 12. That was his decision, not George W. Bush. He may have given the idea, written, and usually presidents write records beforehand, suggestions to the next president what could be done. But that does not mean the President of the United States currently has to abide by that. Everything that is in law right now, at the time, when George W. Bush took office, the first 180 days, President Barack Hussein Obama, and his name is Hussein, if nobody wants to hear it no more, it is there. He had the right to get rid of any law. Executively, he has the executive power to either stop a law completely in its tracks, freeze a law, that means they'll evaluate it, see if it's still necessary to keep or keep the law. He has that right. So when it came to Iraq, he did what he felt was right. He decided that we need to end in early in 2012 to 13. We've already begun to scale down in 2012, reaching near 2013. I know many people say, wait a minute, didn't we were supposed to leave in 2012 to 11? Yes, but the full scale down has not completed yet. There are still troops in Iraq. No matter how people will say there are no troops there, there are. There's a small contingency of troops that are being scaled back as we speak, mainly because they're supposed to strip down the entire bases that are there. We do not leave our bases fully stocked with our equipment and weapons. They must be ripped out. The basic bases themselves, counting on whatever negotiations that are done in Iraq with the Prime Minister and the military there, they can take it over or they can make a request to destroy it. So basically what came out to this debate, and this is a static, if I'm pronouncing it right properly, I'm sorry if I'm not, like I said, I don't know it all, a static enforcement agreement. Now, if I understand this correctly, what both candidates were saying when Barack Obama stated that Mitt Romney wanted to keep troops there, 10,000 or more, and when Mitt Romney said, you said the same thing with this static enforcement agreement, where you wanted to have maybe 5,000 troops. This is what I understand correctly. The majority of a bulk of our forces, which were originally at the max, was 100, maybe 135 to 100,000 troops at the time. When the scale down was commenced, there can be, once the entire main regiments and platoons and air wings, or whatever you want to call them, have scaled back, there can be a small contingency of officers. Military officers and troops can stay there, which can be Army, Marine, Air Force. They have the right, if they believe that they're still necessary for some level of defense in Iraq territory. That is what basically is very more broad than that. But the static enforcement agreement means basically there will be a certain amount of troops placed in certain positions. That's what static means, stationary. These troops would stay in certain positions where they would do protection, or maybe the consulate needs extra protection. Maybe the Prime Minister or the President of Iraq may still need some protection, even with their national army there. It may still need it. Maybe there's some other type of agreements that are still being struck, where the contingency may still be needed between maybe 5,000 to 10,000 troops. That's what was said on this debate. Barack Obama didn't want to come up to terms with that, but from what I understood, there was a request made for this agreement. Both sides, Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, had talked about it. Barack Obama did not do the agreement. Now, what we do know about Iraq, if anyone knows, there has been some terrorism that has been going on in the last 4 months or so. It has happened. At least, for at least 4 to 6 months, there has been sporadic terrorism there. Now, this agreement would have helped the Iraqi forces a little more, even though they do have a military. Let's be honest, when a military has been destroyed and then reconstructed, even with a proper general, even with a proper leader, if the people are still having a problem, especially with the military, they're not going to be 100% stable, even though it has been known they have been constructed for the last 4 or 5 years. It can still be very hard to keep everything stable. There are several sections in Iraq that are not stable yet. But this is what it came down to. And who won that debate? On any points during the debate, all around for the last 15 minutes, maybe almost, 45, no, I'll say about 44 to 45 minutes. Mitt Romney and Barack Obama were basically pretty much almost equal. I cannot say who was ahead there, so I'm going to leave it at that. The next one was Libya. Now, Libya was a point that many people remember during the second debate. This was not brought up. They did not bring up what happened with the ambassador, and didn't bring up what happened to the three other Americans who were murdered. They did bring up the point of, basically, they both basically talked about trying to find a way to get things to work more properly with the government there, roughly speaking. Both of them basically said the same thing. And essentially speaking, anything else here? They wanted, or basically both of them wanted to make sure that Pakistan didn't have such a heavy influence in Afghanistan. Both of them are bordered together. And both of them roughly talked about trying to keep the borders protected, because right now Pakistan is already known to still have a very strong terrorist influence. Ergo, how we actually got Osama bin Laden, he was in Pakistan. He had a section there that was a cell there. He lived in a compound. That compound got destroyed by a SEAL team, basically like a special forces group for the Navy. Essentially, we know they're there. Both of them roughly talked about that, and they both really talked almost exactly the same. So who won that one? Neither one. I think they're both pretty much even in that. When it came to Egypt, when it talked about Mubarak, this is where they differ a little bit. Barack Obama basically wanted the Egyptian government to continue functioning. Not saying he wanted Mubarak in power. He didn't. But he did say that he wanted to, basically, what is the right word? To promote freedom. That the people there wanted to be free. He wanted to give them the opportunity. He tried to give them incentives. Some of it was military aid. Not military aid. Some of it was civilian aid. My mistake, ladies and gentlemen. Mainly civilian aid. There was no main military aid from the United States. They did not get involved in it. Mainly. Most of what happened was from the Egyptian government itself when it began to break down. But you can say that between the two, Mitt Romney really was not happy that Mubarak stayed in power, but no one proper was put in his place. He would have liked that Mubarak had to replace with someone that was a lot more stable. Right now, the Muslim Brotherhood is in power right now. And if you don't know who the Muslim Brotherhood is, and maybe there might be people, even Muslims will say, hey, the Muslim Brotherhood are good. Let's be honest, most of the Muslim Brotherhood for the last 10 years has said that Israel should be destroyed. This isn't what I'm saying. This is what Al Jazeera said. This is what also was stated on CNN and MSNBC. For the last 10 years, they stated that Israel is evil and should be destroyed. So once they got into power, and they did because they had elections in Egypt, now there's a very severe situation there that they're not stable. A lot of people say they're stable. They're not. The same as Libya, you got the same problem in Egypt. They're not stable right now. And when it came to Libya, the problem right now is, sorry for the spitting, the problem now with Libya is simple. Libya is completely unstable right now. There are huge amounts of upheavals as well as civil disobedience, mainly because the military cannot get total control of what's going on, particularly that the leaders there are very corrupt. They are so bad right now. At the time of this recording, they've already had another outbreak of violence in Libya. That is how bad it is. And I'm sure many people will say, who cares about Libya? Who cares about all the areas that are in the Middle East? Well, here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. This is the reason why the debate is so localized around the Middle East. As much as people do not want to get involved in it, the problem is this. Much of the oil, other than the United States, the largest oil deposits in the world belong here. That's the truth. We just don't drill or try to dig it up anymore. Not the way we used to. We still drill and we still dig, but not to the extent that we used to. So the majority of the oil now is still coming from the Middle East. And it's not talking about the United States getting it. You've got most of Europe is getting the fuel there. Asia, which is China, Japan, Indonesia. You've got also India has getting oil from there. You've got Vietnam, places like that. Fuel is very important around the world. We still depend on it. No matter what people say, we should go solar and electricity. Most of these countries throughout the world, we got about 300 countries throughout the entire planet. Most of them under the UN. Rest either have some type of pact between each other or they're basically independent. Many of them run on oil, and many of them have weapons that can attack one another. Many of them also have nuclear weapons that can attack one another. If there's no stability in the Middle East, anything could happen in the rest of the world. That's the reason why many people that next to the United States, the UK, which is United Kingdom, Spain, Germany, you've got the USSR, they get the fuel from there as well. Keeping this stable is important. And that's the reason why we're stuck like this. No matter what anybody says that fighting is wrong, America is wrong. See it like this, ladies and gentlemen. If we don't dig for our own oil, mainly because of environmental issues, not saying that our environment is badly damaged, it's because of the battle between people who want to keep the environment pristine and protected, and the people who want to dig it, try to keep it as clean and pristine and protected as possible, but get what we need to maintain our requirements to run everything, including my lights, including rechargeable batteries for my camera, including watching TV. This is the reason why we do this. And I'm saying this clearly. I understand violence isn't always right for everyone. Everybody wants peace, but you can't have it when it's like this. So that's just a little bit for people who are looking at this video and saying, I can't stand this. People don't want peace. It's stupid. Leave them alone. We can't. As long as we get some of our oil from there, we can't. As long as our allies get oil from there, we can't. As long as there is not so much violence because we still get a good amount of oil from there, we can't leave. So let me go back to this, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that little bit going off. Let's see here. All right. When it comes to Iran, what was said from both candidates? Both candidates are basically saying this. When it came to Barack Obama, he talked about doing whatever is necessary to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. Now, if anyone remembers in the previous debate, the president said simply, no, was it president or was it the vice president that said it? In the vice presidential debate, Joe Biden basically stated that they may have the fuel necessary, in other words, the nuclear material needed to make a nuclear bomb. They do not have the actual hardware to actually make a missile to launch the thing. The president didn't say that this time. He said simply to make sure they don't get the weapon because they already got the raw material to make the explosives. We will do the most greatest sanctions possible to stop them. We have done this. Now, Mitt Romney basically said the sanctions right now that is imposed right now are not strong enough. They should be much more tougher. When it comes to their embargoes, to their trade, it should be a lot more tougher. Now, I can say that the way things are when it comes to their trade agreements, with most of the other countries throughout the Middle East and throughout the world, their trade hasn't really stopped much. It was a lot more stringent around 2009 to 2010. That's what I know. And into 2011, it began to lax, began to get a lot less. You could say that that was Hillary Clinton's problem. You could say maybe Joe Biden made that call or Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton is the Secretary of State. She would make those type of agreements going with Iran, like with the rest of the countries, like North Korea. She's the one that goes out there and tries to negotiate with the ambassadors or with the heads of those states or the prime minister or the president, or whoever you want to call it, or dictator, to try and make an agreement. If you want to say one of them did it instead of President Obama, it's okay. Because a lot of times, even though the president will make the decision to make this embargo or sanctioning happen, it's usually an ambassador or the Secretary of State that is responsible to go out there and try and do what is necessary to do it. Condoleezza Rice did that, particularly when she was working in North Korea. So I'm going to leave it there. But for Mitt Romney, he wants to make sanctions so stringent on their economy that they'll have no choice but to back down with their nuclear weaponry. Now, I don't know if he's going to do that or not. It's a possibility he'll learn from his Secretary of State, because I don't think Hillary Clinton's going to be Secretary of State when he takes office, or she may still. It's hard to tell. I can't really tell you. but essentially speaking, he'll know from his Secretary of State or his ambassadors what can be done with those leaders. But I do believe out of that debate, the one who said more was Nick Romney. He did. So basically, most of this debate has been dead even, but this part, when it came to Iran, when it comes to dealing with sanctions, dealing with trying to stop them from making nuclear weapons, excuse me, Nick Romney sounded better. Now, when it came to China, this was a strong topic, because if no one understands the pact agreement, that was made maybe about the late 1990s, just before George W. Bush took office, and then was completed by George W. Bush. When Bill Clinton was in office, he did a main pact with China. As well, he also did one with Canada and Mexico. We have products from Mexico, a large chunk. We have products from Canada, not as much as Mexico. And our largest bulk comes from China. Now, each one had their own agreement. But essentially speaking, China is flooding the United States with huge amounts of products. And this is something that was not said during the Chinese discussion. Even though both the president as well as our candidate, Nick Romney, did talk about trying to make sure that China was forced to do whatever is necessary to have fairness. Because as both Nick Romney and the president said, China is really reduced their currency. In other words, like this. An American dollar used to be the largest currency we knew from the 1970s. I have to give you a little bit of a back history. I know, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. So this could be understood. From the 1900 to about maybe 1968 to about 1970 or 75, the world reserve currency, if I'm correct, if I'm right, I believe I am, you can check for yourself. The one who was the world currency was Britain. The pound at that time, between 1900 to about 1970 to 75, was the head of the reserve currency. What does that mean? If you go to another country, let's say you have pound notes, that's what they use in England. You can exchange that money for another currency. Now, people understand this because they've probably done it. The exchange rate, which always varies, because I actually went to check with a place where you can change your money to another currency. It's constantly changing, so you can't get an actual number. But if you know in general, British pound notes had heavy weight. In other words, if you have one British pound, for American dollar, it could be about $10 American for one British pound note. That means they don't produce as many notes or dollar bills like us. They make very little, and anyone else will have to give you a lot of their money to equal a British pound note. But after 1970 or 75, America became the world reserve currency, where the dollar, and many people who have traveled, I'm sure you know it, back in the 70s and 80s, even into a certain point into the 90s, American money, you can get almost anything. You can get almost, I think, by 2002 or 4, in Vietnam, $1,000 can get you 100,000 of their currency. No, not 100,000. 10 or 20 million of their currency. 10 or 20 million. That's when America was still stable. So honestly, that is how it goes. When you don't produce that much of your own currency, everywhere else has to give you huge amounts of currency to equal yours. Now the problem here is this. The United States currency, we're producing a lot of dollars. So $1 bill anywhere else, we have to give them a whole bunch like it did back in the 70s. Like the British dollar equivalent, which is a pound, we have to give between $3 or $6. I can't really be specific right now what the currency change right now is. I think it might be at least $2 or $3 American at least. So when it comes to China, if you want to, whatever they use over there, yen, no, not Japan. I don't know what the name of their notes are called. But their money, probably a single dollar for us, which would be theirs, maybe about $10 or $20. We have to give them to get one of theirs. $1 theirs. say they want them to raise their currency, in other words, print more money, so then it will be more equal. They also want, Barack Obama wants them to be fair and not to, no, that was Mitt Romney's point of view, sorry. The president basically said he has taken them to court to try and get them to stop doing copyright infringement because they do that. Supposedly he won. And now they're being supposedly ordered by the courts to start buying products from us. Mitt Romney said that he wants to make sure they raise their currency, increase it. He also wants to announce to the world that I can't remember, a currency manipulator, that's it. As a currency manipulator, they're honestly forcing the world market to recognize only their money. And he wants to put some type of sanction against them if it's necessary. But he wants them to play fair as well. This is what was not stated by both candidates, which I'm saying right now. When Barack Obama went to the court, he's talking about the world court. There is a world court, like the UN, the United Nations. And many people who deal in the world court understand that the government that is being sued, basically by another government, in many cases, they don't have to listen to the world court. Unless the UN backs up the world court, it doesn't make a difference. Right now, the UN has not fully backed the world court and forcing China to do something about their currency. They have not done nothing. So essentially speaking, even though both of them talk very eloquently, until the UN fights China, and unfortunately China is part of I believe, the UN Peacekeeping Council. I could be wrong. If it's not, it's part of the UN Council. But it's a good possibility they're part of the Peacekeeping Council. So they're not going to sue, not going to back the world courts. They're not, even though they've been ordered to. So I think both of them were pretty much even, but that point was not mentioned. And I wish to also say neither one of them talked about the Philippines. Now, why would I bring something up like that? Barack Obama and Mitt Romney said that they want to try and make sure all their allies are helped, to protect them, to show them that they're there. Now, right now, the Obama administration has been notified by the Filipino administration. If anybody who's Filipino, I have friends who are Filipinos. They know what's going on in your country. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, China, which is not too far away from the Philippines, just like Japan's not too far away, they're about to invade them. They begged the United States government for a request. I'm not Filipino. I'm not. But I'm telling you right now, as someone who has friends that are Filipino, this is something that's terrifyingly terrible. Because in the Philippines, we used to have an air base there. Now, I know a lot of people heard about about how the air base is there and the women there the prostitutes there was abundant. Huge abundance of sex there. That's true. A lot of their economy was driven by the air base. When the air base left, their economy dropped like a stone until it rebuilt itself in the last 3 years. But the problem right now is China wants to take them over. And they asked for some type of aid from the United States. The Obama administration said they would give them some help and have not done it. They first said they'll help them, and then they stopped. They said, sorry, we can't help you. So neither one of them talked about it. And I find that very disturbing. The Philippines used to be a great ally by the United States because during the, I believe it was the Spanish-American War, and during the Spanish-American War's ending, there was another war that was fought to claim the Philippines. Teddy Roosevelt was part of it. And the Philippines became a commonwealth like Puerto Rico. Eventually, they made a request to become the independent country, which they did, unlike Puerto Rico. And we kept the Air Force there due to the Second World War. We've had them there. We've helped them. They've been a part of our lives. But now, when they're asking for help, we're not willing to give it. I find that distasteful. Now, many things were talked about as well. They talked about drones. Both candidates said drones are essential for trying to take out specific targets. In other words, heads of terrorists. Or even though they won't mention it, heads of state, if necessary, that are becoming very dangerous. This is not what's usually talked about, but it's the truth. If you want to take out terrorists with a drone, you can take out heads of state or any type of, what would you call it? Dictator. Sorry, kind of blanked. But essentially speaking, that's what they're used for. Romney said there should be more ways to do it other than that, finding more better diplomacy. You could say Barack Obama said the same thing. So both of them pretty much had almost the same answer. Now, certain parts of what was said during this debate were not foreign related, and I wish to say that it seems that Barack Obama does not understand about bankruptcy. He doesn't seem to understand it. So I'm going to say this clearly. When it came to the automotive industry, when it came to, I believe, Ford, and it came to GM, and also became to, Ford, GM, I don't know why I'm blanking on, maybe Chevrolet or anyone else, that went to the government and asked for money. There is a way for a business, like a automotive business, to stay in business but basically go near bankruptcy. That's called Chapter 7, if I'm correct. I could be wrong about it. There's two of them. There's Chapter 7 and Chapter 11. Chapter 7 is a retooling where they basically would change around the structure of their business. If they have to, they got to lay some people off. Then they would retool their business and then reopen for business. Probably have some backers next to the ones they already had. So basically the president's saying about liquidation, and Romney had said that these automotive companies should go to liquidation. He didn't say that. No one said that. Bankruptcy is different from liquidation. When you liquefy something in business, that means you're going to basically kick everyone out. You're going to sell all the equipment and then sell the property itself to make a profit if possible. Chapter 7 basically is talking about retooling and changing how your company works. And I know a lot of people are saying, you know what, it's not fair that people have to lose their jobs. True, look, I'm not working now because I got hurt on my job. I can understand. I'm getting killed here, having at least $10,000 to $12,000 in debt of rent for this apartment and child support. I understand how people don't think that people should lose their jobs because they want to try and make an extra profit. But how business works is that in many cases if the business is not working and you're about to lose it, where it's going to go into Chapter 11, which is really bankruptcy, and you will have to chop up your business to the highest seller, if I'm correct. If I'm wrong, sorry. But that's what I understand about Chapter 11, when you basically sell off your business in pieces, not just basically liquefy everything, just sell everything off to anyone. There's a difference between doing blocks than just doing it everywhere. Look at CompUSA. That happened to them. But essentially speaking, in this, you have no choice but to do that. If your business grows back, you can always hire the people back, if it's possible. It doesn't seem to be fair, but that's how business works. You have to shrink sometimes, let people go, sometimes if it's important to sell some equipment to get some money to keep everything going, then restart again. So it seems that Barack Obama does not understand that, because he kept talking about liquidation when it's already been said on CNN or Fox or NBC. They never talked about liquidation. Romney never said it. So many of those people, if they did say it, they were misquoting, because there's never been anything that had been said about that from either candidate. Now, talking about teachers for both. For Barack Obama, when it talked about being competitive to other countries and other nations, we need better schools, we need better teachers. That I understand and agree. Romney said the same thing. But here's the problem when it comes to teachers. And I'm not knocking teachers. I met some, I knew some, and I can understand the point of view. Tenure is very important. You stay there for a certain amount of time, you get tenure, so you can't just be fired. But here's the problem. Like in New York, where I'm living right now, the problem with tenure is that there are some very bad teachers out there. They cannot be fired. When it comes down to it, like in New York, if a teacher is found to maybe be molesting a child, or a teacher has been very violent toward other teachers, or have been doing something that has been unlawful, but not to the point where they go to jail. They go to a place called the rubber room. The rubber room is a place where teachers would sit in a classroom and sit there and collect a check while their case is being said. Some teachers have been known to be there for 4 or 5 or 6 years or more, and they stay in that rubber room even when the case has already been decided. Sometimes they still stay in that rubber room because sometimes, even though the case has been decided, they decide they should stay there anyway. This is the problem with tenure. And all around the country, there is tenure. Now, I understand there should be tenure to a point, but there's got to be some flexibility. And Nick Romney didn't say what the flexibility should be, but he did say clearly for teachers who don't do right, they should get the boot. Now, for teachers there, please, I'm not disrespecting you, but let's be honest. You know some teachers who have not done the job right, who have done some stupid things, who don't work hard enough. Some of them don't even care as long as they get a paycheck. I understand sometimes your hands are tied because of what work you get. In other words, what curriculum you're given, if you can't get one yourself, or what amount of supplies you get, because sometimes you get strenuous supplies. But a lot of times you got to work with what you got and care about the students. Many teachers don't always care about them. Some do, some don't. The only thing they care about is their tenure. So for certain times, tenure should have some type of loophole in it to get people out there not functioning properly in the educational business. That's what Nick Romney said, and I agree with him, so he won that bit. Now, let's see what else we got here. For Syria and Israel. Syria and Israel was a very hot topic because Syria is a big hotbed, just like Libya and just like Egypt. Sorry, kind of blank. There's a lot to think about. Essentially, ladies and gentlemen, they're having really bad fights out there. What should be done with Syria? Syria right now should not have the back turned by the United States. This is what they both said. Something should be done for Syria, but let's see. For Syria, what should be done? Wait a minute, I got a lot of notes here, ladies and gentlemen. For Nick Romney, he said they should get more help in trying to work on making a council because they're very divided and very spread out. The president really didn't give a good explanation of what could make them come together and should they come together. He just talked about trying to make it stable in that region of the Middle East. So I think Romney did a much better job than that. Let's see. The look and feel of this debate. At this moment, Nick Romney basically stayed exactly as he'd been for the last 2 debates. He had been stable. He didn't really show any more or less aggression than he normally did. He was very clear on his points. He was very compassionate. I know some people won't, but at the very beginning of it, when he talked about the people who died in Libya, because they didn't really talk much about it, he at least gave his condolences like he did in the last debate. The president, he roughly talked about what happened with Libya, but he didn't really give the same type of condolences. Again, I know people are saying, this is a small little thing, but it's something that you have to understand. No, sorry, not have to. I would like you to understand. Sorry about that, have to. This is what you do in a debate. You're trying to win people over to your side who are undecided or who's on the other side. Showing compassion is very important in a debate. People are watching you. Millions of people right now are watching you. It's important to let people know that you care about what's going on. You're giving them your heart, in a sense. Like, look, I care about people. These guys died. I feel terrible. I give my condolences. The president really didn't give that much condolences the first time in the second debate when he talked about them. He just talked about getting the coffins that were shipped in from Libya. In this case, he did the same thing. When he roughly talked about Libya very shortly, saying what needs to be done there, he didn't give condolences either. It would have been better he showed some compassion. He didn't. And throughout the night, the president was attacking Romney as much as possible, stating that he was wrong a lot of times and bordering on disrespect, really interfering with Romney's talk as much as he could. Now, a lot of people say, good, he's showing more aggression. true. In the first debate, he showed zero aggression. In the second debate, like I said, he might have gone overboard with his aggression and showed very little passion. No, compassion. Sorry, not passion. He showed less compassion to people. I believe he's done it again. He didn't show any compassion to the people or what was going on. I understand that when he was talking about Iran and talking about the students that were killed, he did talk about they need to do something about it. And it's horrible that things happen to these people. But there's got to be a point where you show a little more compassion in that. Because honestly, when he talked about Iran, I remember when they showed it on CNN, and he never condoned what happened. When the Iran students, 30,000 of them were killed by the government, he was completely quiet about it. Now, I know people are going to say, oh no, that's not true. It actually was true, because if it was saying, I do not condone this, there would have been a response from the Iran government saying, United States, keep your nose out of it. There was none. The Iranian government continued what was going on. So, in that respect, saying that was a lie. It is. And when it also came to Israel, he did not say anything about Netanyahu, about the president, or I think his prime minister. He never talked about we having a good relations. We're friends. Nothing. What was said by Nick Romney saying simply, you know what? You basically rather have gone to The View than seeing Netanyahu. What is more important? Going to David Letterman or going to The View, which he did do this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not for either candidate, but it was proven that he went on television. Are you trying to tell me that the president had to be scheduled in to get to David Letterman or The View? I've never heard of something like that. Netanyahu is someone that the United States or the prime minister or the president of Israel is someone we don't play around with. We show our respect and compassion since the 1960s. We have been by their side. No matter if you agree or disagree with the United States giving a petition to the UN back in, I think, 1948, or 1954, I can't remember when. They went to the UN and said Israel should have their land. And since then, they've been fighting with everyone else. But the point is, the United States has been with them. Are you trying to tell me, or to an ordinary person, that a person that we're supposed to have an alliance with, that when we're not there, if anything's going wrong, they're going to do it on our behalf. Their people will die for us, in a sense. And I know that's not nice to say, but it's the truth. You rather go to The View or David Letterman than talk to the man that is your partner? And he didn't say that we're good friends. We work out our differences. I know we had a scheduling problem. I worked it out. That would have been a very easy thing to debunk from Nick Romney. Could have said, look, I have a very hectic schedule. I spoke to Netanyahu. He understood. He could have said that, ladies and gentlemen. He didn't. I know people would say, why does the president have to justify himself? In a debate, you have to. This is how you win people over. This is how you bring people into your side. It's important. Finally, and there was a lot of other points, but I'm going to keep this short because we're in the 40-minute mark already. Who won the debate? A few points went to Romney. But generally, both of them were dead even. Now, what does this mean for the election? I can't tell you. You can look at the polls. You can look at this. There's going to be people who's going to say the president won this. But honestly, they were dead even. And this is the truth. Yes, Nick Romney had some very good points, but honestly, they were both dead even. So saying who won it, you can't. They both had almost the same points. There have been a few points where maybe Barack Obama had a few good points, but Romney's points were a little better. But the point is still not enough to tell who is the clear winner of this debate. Now, I will be making a video later on who you should consider for President of the United States. I'll be probably making a video on that very soon. I will not be giving my own views on it, my own decision of who I'll vote for, but I will give you options and information of what could help you decide, should I vote for this guy or this guy? Oh, this information's for this guy. Oh, this guy's information's here. Instead of rhetoric from both sides. Because this is what it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen. If you watch my videos, I've done my best to try and tell you simply, have an open mind. See what they've both done. Not the rhetoric from both sides on Romney being a devil or Barack Obama being a communist or a racist, or I've heard a few people, black and white, saying that's nothing but a stupid nigger, and Romney nothing but a stupid fucking cracker. Forgive me for my language, but this is what it comes down to. Honestly, take away the name calling. Look at what they both done. That's what I'm going to give you. That's what I've already given you. So I hope you enjoyed the Zane View. Give me a subscribe and comment. And this is like a almost 46-minute video. I know it's quite long, but it gives you good information of who you think might have won this debate. So have a good night, ladies and gentlemen.